When I see eggs at the grocery store, I always wonder what it would be like to try and hatch them. So one day, I decided it was finally time to put a pack of grocery store eggs in my incubator and see what could happen from there. And I actually did hatch 12 eggs. But let me tell you, a lot happened from when I went to the grocery store all the way up to actually having a little chicken hatch before my very eyes. And it's safe to say that I probably can't eat chicken again because they are so cute. But how it all really began was with an idea. And after waiting 4 weeks and trying to incubate 2 different packs of grocery store eggs, I finally realized that I probably wouldn't be able to hatch store-bought eggs because nothing ever happened. They essentially just became rotten eggs.
Oh!
But I did become very determined to actually hatch some baby chickens. And that's when I made the 2-hour journey up to Farmer Karen, since she agreed to let me rent 22 chicken eggs to be able to finally experience the beauty of hatching. And as I made my way to the farm, there's something you need to know. I was still very confused as to why the store-bought eggs wouldn't hatch. And I learned that it's because chickens lay eggs with or without males, meaning they don't need no man to fertilize their eggs. And that also means that the eggs that we buy from the grocery store are laid by female chickens who have not been fertilized by any male chickens, and therefore they have virtually no chance at hatching. And if you do want them to hatch, you need to buy eggs that have been laid by chickens who've lived in the same coop as a male and had their eggs fertilized. So this time, I knew we were on the right track to hatching our chickens because we had fertilized eggs this time. I arrived to the farm, Rafi and I picked up the eggs, made the trek back home, and immediately the eggs went into the incubator and the countdown began. I was surprised to learn that chickens can hatch in 21 days, so they only need a mere 3 weeks of development in that egg until they become little tiny magical living things. And it all seemed to happen very quickly. I added water to the base to keep the humidity high. Every 5 days, the eggs got automatically turned by the incubator, which is essential for development. And I was disgusted by the fact that by day 10, something started to smell really bad. And I started to get really nervous that there was a problem with the eggs and they weren't gonna hatch. But it's normal for the hatching rate to vary. At the farms, it's not easy with the cold weather in the winter to collect eggs right after they're laid. And there ended up being 3 eggs that basically exploded a dark bluey green substance that, my friends, is what a rotten egg looks like. So you can imagine the smell that accompanied that. But it was all part of the process because I knew in my heart that somebody was gonna hatch. And by day 15, I candled the eggs to make sure they were growing properly. And there were a few that looked like nothing more than a fridge egg. But others, they glowed a deep yellow color, and when I shined my flashlight into those eggs and turned out the lights, I saw moving action deep inside some of those glowing eggs. It was like magic. I saw veins, I saw what looked like to be little feetsies, and it felt like everything was finally coming together. So much so that it was finally approaching day 21, hatching day, and the countdown on that incubator was almost over. I prepared their little heat lamp, brooder, food, and water bowl with marbles, which is just so they don't have any chance at drowning since they're no bigger than the tiny crevasse in the middle of my hand. And on day 22, I went to bed. And the very next day, I woke up and thought I heard a little bit of chirping. So I ran over to the incubator and saw this little guy chirping away, drying up in the incubator, and it was in that moment I realized that we successfully hatched our first little baby chicken. I was so excited, and before I knew it, there were pips and cracks in many of the eggs, and the journey had officially begun. And in full force, because these eggs started to crack open and chicken started to come out of my ears. This process was truly magical. It was such a beautiful thing to see the eggs crack open and the little tiny baby chicken plop out. It can take minutes or 24 hours for a chick to fully escape the egg. It pips a small hole or chip in the egg with their little egg tooth, which is the only tooth a chick will ever have, and it falls off a day or 2 after hatching. And then Mother Nature does her thing. The chick uses its little tooth and then its feet to unzip the shell, pushing and stretching until it finally comes out. And then it lies there looking very tired for a little while, until it starts to flop around, bump around, and knock the other eggs as they get their little legs dried off. And their little chirps and knocks on the eggs seem to awaken the other unhatched eggs, because once one hatched, they all started to hatch. And it was one of the most astonishing experiences to bear witness to. Rafi and I ended up staying up all day and all night watching each one hatch. And once they were dry enough, which takes up to 24 hours, I would gently pick them up, admire them in my hands, and then proceed to place them in their new little brooder home and watch them carefully to make sure they were starting to eat, drink, play, sleep. They don't technically need to eat for about 48 hours after hatching, but everything that a little baby chicken does in their little lives. After that first day, we had about 7 or 8 of them hatch, and just like that, we became mothers. Our chicken breeds included duckles, silkies, cochins, Saremas, Polish chicks, and golden-laced Wyandottes. Some were really tiny and others were a little bigger, so I had to be careful to make sure all of them got along well and there was no beef on the turf. Straight chicken over here. They would drink this yellow Gatorade that had extra nutrients to help them grow, and I tried my best to just let them do their thing without interfering too much, and they needed each other to thrive. They would waddle around and play and chirp away like no tomorrow. And by the second day, we had a few more hatch, and more eggs wiggling and cracking open slowly. I continued to introduce all the dried up chicks into the brooder, and of course, I made sure to watch and see what their movements were looking like in that brooder. Because that way, I would know that if they scattered, they were too hot, and if they cuddled too often, they were too cold. I was hoping I could take them swimming, but chicks actually don't swim. But they do have a little claws at the end of each toe, and they can lightly scratch and know that they will fall asleep in quiet, warm hands. And it's nice holding a snoozing chick. By the third day, we had all of them hatch but about 4 of them, which Farmer Karen actually told me is a great hatching rate. It's usually about 50 to 75%. And once they were about 5 days old, I figured, well, it's time to invite a couple friends over to visit.
Hi guys.
These are little chickies.
Oh my god.
They're so cute.
Look how little that one is.
Oh my god.
This one is squirrel.
They're brother and sister. This one's Butter.
That one's Squirrel.
They just tried biting me.
Those your friends, Rev?
Everyone loved them so much. It was a ton of fun watching these little chickens play and eat and drink and hop around. And they loved their stuffed mother chicken too. That seemed to help them keep warm, and they would hop around on top of the chicken and jump off of it like it was some sort of slide. It was extremely cute. I even tried feeding them some scrambled eggs.
Hey, what about you, homie? You need some munch, you're so small.
Don't come at me. I know it's cannibalism, but Karen told me that they liked that and it was good protein for them. But they actually didn't even seem to like the scrambled eggs. They wouldn't really eat them. It was so much fun, you guys. And just a few days before I had to take them back to the farm to live out their lives in nature, something happened that you need to know about. Which, before I tell you, I first need you to know that you shouldn't worry because these are not meat birds. And I made sure of that because I didn't want to hatch chickens for them to be sold as food. I strictly wanted to hatch chickens that I knew would live out good lives as adults. So these chickens were gonna have great lives at the farm. But as I mentioned before, something else happened that you need to be aware of because a few days before I had to bring them back, I actually ran into a very big, very sad problem. I did notice initially there was one chick in the coop that was moving more slowly than the others and I had to help it drink, whereas all the others were moving quick and eating and drinking on their own. I tried not to think much of it and Karen told me to just let the little chick do its thing, and each night before bed, well actually like 5 times or more per day, I would count each chicken making sure that all 12 of them were safe and happy and everything was going amazing. Until one day I woke up and I was doing my daily count and I only counted 11 of them. And I could not believe my eyes to see that one of the chicks did not make it. I had just seen it doing fine a few hours prior, and in this moment I was very upset. I did not know what to do. I was thinking, well, maybe can I save its life? I hope I can. So I tried doing CPR with a straw, instructed by Karen, hoping that giving some air into the airways would somehow magically make it wake up. But after a long while of trying that, it didn't work. And I was so upset, I didn't know what to do. I honestly felt like a failure because everyone was doing so well until this happened, and all I wanted was to just save this baby's life somehow. I was praying to Mother Nature that the chicken would magically start hopping around again. But I finally found peace with the fact that it's all part of the cycle of life and the plan that Mother Nature has for these little beings on Earth. And I knew that there was a chance that some of them would not survive initially, but I didn't actually expect that to happen to us. I tried to be thankful for the ones that did do well, but I couldn't help but mourn what felt like a huge loss in this journey. And as thankful as I was for all the chickens, I was really feeling hopeless at this point because I lost one of them, and I knew at this point, before I brought them back to the farm, I needed to give the other chickens the best possible experience with me. So of course I continued to count them, check on them. I even played them some guitar for the first time in their little tiny lives, and they seemed to love the music.
Shiny glass layer, what a trip. And in the end, you always get wet. It's like the clocks, they are always turning. Every hour you can feel it burning. Like a fire inside that becomes a threat.
And after a few more days passed, just like that, bittersweet, it was time to bring the chickens back to the farm. And as Raffi and I made our way back to the farm, I thanked Mother Nature for the gifts she gave us in this experience. And as sad as I was to let these little ones go, it was exciting when Farmer Glenn took me to the back to see some beautiful things, especially these little babies. And it was in that moment that I knew these chicks were gonna live a really good life as birds who can flop and hop around at the farm without being sent to the grocery store to be eaten. So now, when I see eggs at the grocery store, I'll never have to wonder again what it would be like to hatch them. And the only thing that I'm thinking of now is what it would be like to raise baby goats.